She
me!
fell
Let
for
go
her
of my
father's
bag!
greatest enemy.
Give it to
What
me now.
happened next shook the entire
You're
Wild
not walking
West.
away.
Every street, every wooden building, and every quiet corner carried memories of past troubles. From the time she was very young, she learned that some names were not to be spoken kindly. One name, in particular, was always spoken with anger and warning. That name belonged to the man her father called his greatest enemy. Her father was one of the most respected men in town. He was strong, proud, and known for standing firm in difficult times. People trusted him and often came to him for advice. He had helped build the town into what it was, and his past was filled with hard work and sacrifice. But behind his calm face lived a deep pain that never fully healed. That pain came from a long-running feud that had shaped his life and the town's history. The girl did not remember when she first heard about the enemy. It felt like the stories had always been there, like the desert itself. Her father spoke of the man as someone dangerous, someone who brought trouble wherever he went. According to him, this man was responsible for the worst moments of his life. Whenever the topic came up, her father's voice grew cold and his eyes hardened. He warned her to stay away from that man and anything connected to him. As a child, she accepted her father's words without question. She admired him deeply and believed everything he said. To her, her father was a hero, and heroes did not lie. She promised herself that she would never cross paths with the man who caused her father so much pain. In her young mind, the enemy was nothing more than a shadow filled with bad intentions. The town itself reflected this division. Some people stood firmly by her father's side, while others stayed quiet, not wanting to take part in old conflicts. The past was a heavy weight on everyone's shoulders. Even those who had not lived through the early days of the feud felt its effects. Conversations stopped when certain topics came up, and gatherings felt tense when memories surfaced. As the girl grew older, she began to notice things she had not noticed before. She saw how the town seemed stuck, unable to move forward. Businesses struggled, families moved away, and fear often replaced hope. She wondered why something that started long ago still had such power. Still, she never questioned her father openly. Respect and loyalty were deeply rooted in her upbringing. Her father raised her with strong values. He taught her to be kind, to work hard, and to stand up for what she believed was right. He wanted her to be strong but also careful. The Wild West was not gentle, especially to young women. He made sure she knew how to survive in a world that could be harsh and unfair. Yet despite his lessons of kindness, his hatred for his enemy remained unshaken. At night, when the town grew quiet and the stars filled the sky, the girl sometimes heard her father pacing the floor. She knew those moments were when the past returned to him. He never spoke about his pain in detail, but it was clear that it haunted him. The girl felt sympathy for him and anger toward the man who caused such suffering. She believed that hatred was justified if it protected loved ones. The stories about the enemy grew larger over time. People whispered that he was heartless, selfish, and incapable of change. Some claimed he enjoyed causing trouble. Others said he was born bad and would always remain that way. These stories painted a picture that left no room for understanding or forgiveness. To the girl, the enemy was not even human, just a symbol of everything wrong with the past. Yet deep inside, curiosity slowly began to grow. It was not strong at first, just a quiet question that appeared from time to time. She wondered how one man could be responsible for so much pain. She wondered what really happened all those years ago. But whenever such thoughts appeared, she pushed them away. Questioning the past felt like betraying her father. Life continued in its steady rhythm. The girl helped her father with daily tasks and supported the town in small ways. She smiled at neighbors and listened to their stories. On the surface, everything seemed normal, but underneath, the tension remained, like a storm waiting for the right moment to return. As she entered adulthood, the world began to feel larger. She wanted to understand more than what she had been told. She noticed that people were complex, not simply good or bad. She had seen kind people make mistakes and strong people break under pressure. These observations made her question the simple version of the feud she had grown up with. Still, her loyalty to her father was unbreakable. He had sacrificed so much for her, and she owed him everything. She believed that standing by him was the right thing to do. If avoiding one man could protect her family, then it was a small price to pay. The town often felt like it was holding its breath. Old wounds were never fully addressed, only covered. The girl sensed that something was bound to change one day, though she did not know how or when. She could feel it in the way people spoke carefully and watched each other closely. Her father continued to prepare for the possibility of trouble returning. He kept a close eye on the town and trusted only a few people. He believed that being ready was the only way to survive. The girl respected his caution, even if it sometimes made her uneasy. In her quiet moments, she looked out across the open land and wondered about freedom. She wondered what it would feel like to live without the weight of the past, but such thoughts felt dangerous, almost forbidden. The past had shaped her identity, just as it had shaped the town. Unknowingly, she was standing at the edge of a life-changing moment. The hatred she had been raised on was about to be tested. The stories she believed were about to be challenged, and the man she had been taught to fear was closer than she realized. For now, though, her world remained unchanged. She was still the loyal daughter of a respected man, living in a town divided by old pain. She did not yet know that her heart would soon be pulled in a direction she never expected. The calm before the storm settled over the Wild West, quietly waiting to be broken. The change began on an ordinary morning, the kind that usually passed without memory. The sun rose slowly over the open land, spreading soft light across the quiet town. The girl stepped outside to help with a simple errand, something she had done many times before. Nothing about the day warned her that her life was about to turn in a direction she never imagined. She walked toward the edge of town where fewer people lived. The air was calm, and the sounds of daily work floated around her. As she moved farther away from the main street, the world felt quieter, almost thoughtful. She liked these moments alone because they gave her space to breathe and think. That morning her thoughts were simple and peaceful. Then she noticed a stranger near an old structure that had been abandoned for years. He stood still, as if unsure whether to stay or leave. At first, she felt only curiosity. Strangers were rare and most people passing through did not stop for long. She kept her distance, watching carefully. The man turned slightly, and for a brief moment their eyes met. There was nothing threatening in his expression. Instead, he looked tired, like someone who had been carrying a heavy burden for a long time. His clothes were worn, but he carried himself with quiet dignity. He did not speak right away, and neither did she. Her heart beat faster, not from fear, but from the strange feeling that this meeting mattered. She could not explain why. She considered turning back, reminding herself of her father's warnings, but something held her in place. It felt rude to walk away without acknowledging him. She greeted him politely, keeping her voice steady. He responded in the same calm manner. His voice was gentle, almost careful, as if he chose his words thoughtfully. They exchanged simple conversation about the weather and the town. Nothing personal, nothing risky. Still, the air between them felt charged with meaning. As they spoke, she noticed how he listened closely, giving her his full attention. People in town often talked without truly listening, always distracted by old worries. This man was different. He seemed present, focused on the moment. That alone made her feel strangely comfortable. She did not know who he was yet, and perhaps that was why she felt safe. He asked her name, and she gave it, though part of her hesitated. She asked for his, and he paused before answering. When he finally did, the name hit her like a sudden chill. It was the name she had heard her entire life spoken with anger. The name her father warned her never to trust. For a moment, She could not breathe. Her mind filled with all the stories, all the warnings, all the fear she had been taught. She expected her body to react with panic, but instead she felt confusion. She looked at him again, searching for signs of the monster she had imagined for so many years, but she saw none. He stood there calmly, not defensive, not proud, just honest. He did not deny who he was. He did not try to explain or excuse himself. He simply waited. She considered leaving immediately. That would have been the safe choice, the loyal choice. Her father's voice echoed in her mind, urging her to walk away. Yet her feet did not move. Curiosity outweighed fear, and she surprised herself by staying. She asked him why he was there. He told her he had business in the area and needed time to settle some old matters. He spoke carefully, avoiding details. She could sense that the past weighed heavily on him, just as it did on her father. It was the first time she realized that the feud had affected both sides deeply. Their conversation ended sooner than she expected. She left with her thoughts racing, unsure how to feel. The image of him stayed with her throughout the day. She replayed every word, every look. Nothing about him matched the stories she knew. That disturbed her more than anything else. Days passed, but the memory did not fade. She told no one about the meeting. Keeping it secret felt necessary, even though she was not sure why. Part of her feared judgment, but another part feared that speaking it aloud would make it too real. Then, by chance or fate, she saw him again. This time it was near a quiet path outside town where few people traveled. He seemed just as surprised to see her. They spoke again, more openly this time. The tension between them eased, replaced by cautious curiosity. He shared small pieces of his life, not dramatic stories, just simple truths. He spoke of mistakes, of misunderstandings, of choices that followed him like shadows. He never blamed others, and he never tried to gain her sympathy. He spoke as someone who had accepted the weight of his past. She listened, torn between disbelief and understanding. Everything she had been taught told her to reject his words, but her heart responded differently. She felt empathy, something she never thought she would feel for this man. Their meetings became more frequent, though always careful and quiet. Each conversation added a new layer to her understanding. She saw his kindness in small actions, the way he treated others with respect, the way he avoided conflict even when it would have been easier to respond harshly. With every meeting, her inner struggle grew stronger. She felt guilty for even speaking to him. She imagined her father's disappointment if he ever found out. Yet she also felt alive in a way she had never felt before. These conversations opened her mind, showing her a world beyond inherited hatred. She began to realize that the feud was not as simple as good versus bad. It was a story shaped by pain, pride, and silence. Both sides had suffered, and both had held onto anger because it felt easier than forgiveness. One evening, as the sun dipped low and painted the land in warm colors, she felt something shift inside her. She looked at him and understood that her feelings had changed. What started as curiosity had grown into something deeper. It scared her, but it also felt honest. She did not name those feelings yet. She was not ready. Admitting them would mean accepting the risk they carried. Instead, she kept them hidden, locked away like a secret she was afraid to open. He sensed her hesitation and never pushed her. His patience made her trust him more. He respected her boundaries and her silence. That respect spoke louder than any promise. At home, she struggled to act normal. Her father noticed her distant expression but said nothing. The weight of her secret pressed heavily on her heart. She loved her father deeply and did not want to hurt him. At the same time, she could not deny what she was discovering for herself. The town remained unaware of the quiet bond forming beyond its borders. Life continued as usual, unaware that old lines were being crossed in silence. The girl stood between two worlds, unsure where she truly belonged. By the end of those days, she knew one thing for certain. Meeting him was not an accident. It was the beginning of something that would challenge everything she believed. The path ahead was uncertain and filled with risk, but turning back no longer felt possible. What began as a chance meeting had become the spark of change. And though she did not yet understand the full cost, her heart had already stepped onto a road that could not be undone. The days that followed felt heavier than before. What once seemed like simple routines now carried hidden tension. The girl woke each morning with a restless heart, knowing she was living between two truths. One was the life she had always known, shaped by her father's values and the town's long memory. The other was the quiet connection growing with the man she was never supposed to trust. Holding both at once felt impossible, yet letting go of either felt wrong. She tried to focus on daily tasks, helping her father and speaking kindly with neighbors. Outwardly, nothing had changed. Inwardly, everything had. Every time her father spoke about the past, his words landed differently. She no longer heard only certainty in his voice. She heard pain, fear, and a deep need to protect what little peace he believed he had left. Her father began speaking more often about being careful. He sensed change in the town, though he did not know its source. Old worries returned to his thoughts and his guard rose again. The girl noticed how his shoulders tightened when certain names were mentioned, how his eyes scanned the horizon as if expecting trouble to appear without warning. Seeing him like this filled her with guilt. At the same time, her meetings with the man continued, though they were careful and spaced apart. They spoke in quiet places where words could be honest without drawing attention. Their conversations grew deeper, touching on values, hopes, and regrets. He spoke openly about wanting peace, about being tired of carrying the weight of old mistakes. He did not pretend to be perfect, and that honesty made his words feel real. She listened more than she spoke. Inside her, questions fought for space. How could two people she cared about see the world so differently? How could truth feel so divided? She began to understand that both men believed they were right, and both believed they had suffered more than the other. This realization made her heart ache. As her feelings deepened, so did her fear. She knew that love, if discovered, would not be seen as gentle or hopeful. It would be seen as betrayal. The thought of her father's reaction haunted her. She imagined his disappointment, his confusion, his pain. That fear followed her everywhere, even in moments of quiet joy. One evening, her father spoke more openly than usual. He shared memories from his younger days, times when the town was new and full of hope. He talked about dreams that never came true and choices that led to long-lasting consequences. The girl listened closely, realizing this might be the closest he would ever come to explaining the feud. Though he never mentioned the enemy by name, his meaning was clear. She wanted to speak then, to ask questions, to challenge what she had been taught, but the words stayed trapped in her throat. She was not ready to face what might come from such honesty. Silence felt safer, even though it hurt. The man, on the other hand, sensed her inner struggle. He never asked her to choose or to act against her family. Instead, he encouraged her to think for herself and to trust her own understanding. He told her that real strength came from facing the truth, even when it was uncomfortable. His calm support made her feel less alone, yet the pressure continued to grow. Rumors started to spread through town, though no one spoke clearly. People felt that something was shifting, that old lines were being tested. Tension returned to conversations, and smiles became forced. The girl realized that secrets rarely stay hidden forever. Her heart felt pulled in opposite directions. On one side was loyalty, tradition, and the desire to protect her father from pain. On the other was honesty, understanding, and a future that did not depend on hatred. She wondered if it was possible to honor both, or if choosing one meant losing the other. Sleep became difficult. Nights were filled with restless thoughts and unanswered questions. She replayed conversations, searching for solutions that did not exist. Each morning brought no clarity, only the certainty that time was running out. One day, her father spoke of preparing for what he feared might come. He did not speak of action, but of readiness, of standing firm. His words carried finality, as if he believed the past was about to return whether he wanted it or not. Hearing this filled her with dread. She knew that silence was no longer an option. She met the man later that day, her emotions close to the surface. She told him about her fears, about her father's growing tension, about the impossible choice she felt she was facing. For the first time, tears fell freely. She felt weak for showing them, but also relieved. He listened without interrupting. When she finished, he spoke gently. He told her that love should never demand the destruction of family. He said that if walking away would protect her and her father, he would understand. His words surprised her. She had expected him to fight for her, but instead he chose her well-being over his own feelings. That moment made her realize how deeply she cared for him. His willingness to step aside, despite his feelings, showed her a kind of strength she had rarely seen. It also forced her to confront the truth she had been avoiding. This was not just a passing connection. It was real, and it mattered. She returned home feeling heavier than before, yet clearer. She understood that avoiding the truth would only make the eventual pain worse. Something had to change, even if the cost was high. The following days were filled with quiet tension. She watched her father closely, noticing every sign of worry. She watched the town, sensing how close it was to repeating old patterns. And she watched herself, realizing she was no longer the obedient child she once was. She was becoming someone who had to choose her own path. In her heart, she knew that love built on honesty was not wrong, even if others believed it was. She also knew that her father's pain was real and deserved respect. Balancing those truths felt like walking a narrow path over deep uncertainty. By the end of that period, the girl accepted that loyalty did not always mean silence. Sometimes it meant courage. Sometimes it meant speaking even when the outcome was uncertain. She did not yet know how or when she would act, but she knew she could no longer live divided forever. The stage was set for a moment that would change everything. The town stood quietly, unaware of the storm forming beneath its calm surface. And the girl, caught between love and loyalty, prepared herself to face a truth that could either heal old wounds or open them wider than ever before. The tension that had been building for weeks finally reached a point where it could no longer be ignored. The town felt different now. People spoke in lower voices, and friendly greetings were shorter than before. Even the air seemed heavy, as if it carried memories that refused to stay buried. The girl felt this change everywhere she went. She knew that the time for silence was ending. Her father became more watchful. He spent longer hours outside, speaking with a few trusted people and checking things that had not mattered in years. He did not explain much, but his actions spoke clearly. He believed that the past was returning, and he was preparing himself for it. Watching him filled the girl with fear and sadness. She loved him deeply and hated the thought that old pain might soon hurt him again. At the same time, her meetings with the man became less frequent. Not because their feelings had faded, but because both understood how dangerous the situation had become. When they did meet, their conversations were quieter and more serious. There was less talk of dreams and more talk of reality. Both sensed that something important was approaching. One evening, the girl learned that her father planned to face his enemy directly. The news struck her like a sudden blow. Though he did not say exactly what would happen, his tone carried determination. He believed that ending things his way was the only path left. Hearing this, the girl felt panic rise inside her. She knew that if nothing changed, the outcome could be tragic for everyone involved. That night, she could not sleep. Her thoughts moved in circles, replaying every moment that led to this point. She realized that the truth she had discovered could no longer remain hidden. Keeping silent would mean allowing fear and misunderstanding to decide the future. Speaking up could bring anger and pain, but it might also bring a chance for peace. As the first light of morning appeared, she made a decision. It was the hardest choice she had ever faced. She would step forward and speak the truth, no matter the cost. Not for herself alone, but for everyone trapped in the shadow of the past. The town gathered later that day, drawn by tension they could not fully explain. People sensed that something important was about to happen. Her father stood among them, calm on the surface but clearly ready for conflict. The man stood at a distance, visible but quiet, his presence stirring old emotions in the crowd. The girl's heart raced as she moved forward. Every step felt heavy, as if the ground itself resisted her. She could feel eyes turning toward her, confusion spreading across familiar faces. Her father looked at her in surprise, then concern. He did not understand why she was there. When she spoke, her voice trembled at first, but she forced herself to continue. She spoke of the past, of how stories had been passed down without question. She spoke of pain, not just her father's, but pain on both sides. She spoke carefully, choosing words that would not inflame anger but invite understanding. At first, the crowd reacted with disbelief. Some shook their heads, unwilling to listen. Others whispered among themselves. Her father's face tightened, a mix of shock and hurt. He felt exposed and confused, unable to understand why his daughter was standing where she was. Then she spoke of her own journey. She explained how she had met the man by chance and discovered a side of him that did not match the stories. She did not excuse past mistakes or deny suffering. Instead, she spoke of honesty, regret, and the cost of holding onto hatred for too long. The silence that followed felt endless. No one moved. The town seemed frozen in that moment. Her father stared at her, his emotions clearly struggling to find balance. Years of anger collided with the love he had for his daughter. The man then stepped forward, slowly and respectfully. He did not raise his voice or defend himself strongly. He spoke of responsibility and regret. He acknowledged the harm of the past and expressed his desire for peace, not conflict. His words were simple, but they carried weight because they were sincere. As he spoke, pieces of the past that had never been openly discussed began to surface. Misunderstandings were clarified. Decisions made in fear were brought into the light. The feud, once painted in clear lines, now appeared complicated and deeply human. The girl watched her father closely. She saw his anger soften into confusion, then into quiet pain. He was being asked to let go of something that had defined him for years. That kind of change does not come easily. The town listened, some reluctantly, others with growing awareness. People began to realize how much of their own fear had been inherited, not chosen. They saw how the feud had shaped their lives without their consent. Her father finally spoke. His voice was steady but filled with emotion. He admitted that the past had consumed him more than he realized. He spoke of loss and regret, of how holding onto anger had given his pain a purpose, even when it hurt him and others. The moment was fragile. One wrong word could undo everything. The girl held her breath, unsure whether her courage had come too late. Then her father looked at her, truly looked at her, and saw not betrayal but bravery. He saw a daughter who wanted a future free from the weight he had carried. That realization shook him deeply. The town remained silent as understanding slowly replaced tension. No one celebrated. No one declared victory. What happened was quieter and more powerful. The cycle of anger was interrupted. By the end of that day, nothing was magically fixed. Pain did not disappear and trust was not fully restored, but something important had changed. Violence had been avoided. Words had replaced fear. The future was no longer locked into the past. The girl felt exhausted but also lighter. She knew that her choice had altered her relationship with her father forever, though she hoped it would grow stronger in time. She also knew that whatever came next, it would be shaped by honesty rather than silence. As the town slowly returned to its routines, the memory of that moment stayed with everyone. They understood that they had witnessed a turning point. A story that could have ended in destruction had instead paused long enough for truth to speak. The girl stood at the edge of that change, aware that the final outcome was still unfolding. The hardest part was not over, but the most dangerous moment had passed. And for the first time, the Wild West town felt capable of moving forward, guided not by old hatred, but by the courage to face the truth. The days after that turning point felt strangely quiet. The town still looked the same, with its dusty roads and familiar faces, but something deep inside it had shifted. People moved a little slower, spoke a little softer, and thought a little longer before judging. The storm that everyone feared had passed, leaving behind a calm that felt new and uncertain. The girl spent much of her time at home with her father. At first, their conversations were careful and short. Both were unsure how to speak after everything that had been revealed. The bond between them had been tested, but it had not broken. Instead, it rested in a fragile place, waiting to be rebuilt. Her father seemed older now, not in body but in spirit. Years of anger had given his life direction, and without it, he felt unsure of who he was supposed to be. Yet, beneath that uncertainty, there was relief. For the first time in a long while, he slept through the night. The past still hurt, but it no longer controlled every thought. The girl watched him closely, helping where she could, offering kindness instead of explanations. She knew that healing could not be rushed. Trust, once shaken, needed time and patience. She was willing to give both. The man stayed on the edge of town, keeping his distance out of respect. He did not want his presence to reopen wounds that were just beginning to close. Though this separation was difficult, he understood that peace required restraint. His actions showed that his words from before were honest. From time to time, the girl saw him from afar. Their eyes met briefly, and in those moments no words were needed. There was understanding, gratitude, and quiet hope. They both knew that what they shared had helped change the course of many lives, even if it came with sacrifice. The town slowly began to talk, not in whispers of fear, but in thoughtful reflection. People shared memories, compared stories, and realized how much of their anger had been passed down without question. Some felt regret for years spent holding onto resentment. Others felt relief that they no longer had to choose sides. Life did not become perfect. Problems still existed, and disagreements still happened. But the old feud no longer defined every choice. The town began to look toward the future instead of constantly turning back. One afternoon, the girl's father asked her to walk with him. They moved slowly along a familiar path, the land stretching wide around them. After a long silence, he spoke. He told her that letting go of anger was harder than holding on to it. Anger had made him feel strong when he felt weak. But now he understood that real strength came from facing pain without letting it turn into bitterness. He thanked her for her courage, though it was not easy for him to admit. His voice carried emotion he had hidden for years. The girl felt tears rise, but she smiled. That moment meant more to her than any apology could. With time, her father agreed to speak directly with the man, not in anger but in honesty. Their meeting was private and quiet. There were no raised voices, only difficult words spoken carefully. They did not become friends and they did not forget the past, but they acknowledged each other's pain and agreed to leave it behind. That meeting marked the true end of the feud, not with celebration but with acceptance. It was enough. The girl felt lighter as weeks passed. The weight she had carried for so long slowly lifted. She no longer felt torn between love and loyalty. Instead, she felt whole. She had learned that love did not erase family and loyalty did not require silence. Eventually, the man approached her father with respect and honesty. He asked for permission to walk openly in the town and to speak with the girl without secrecy. Her father hesitated, then nodded. It was not an easy choice, but it was a sincere one. Trust was being built, step by step. The girl and the man began to spend time together without hiding. They walked through the town, aware of curious eyes but unafraid. Some people smiled, others watched quietly, but no one stopped them. Their presence became a symbol of change, a reminder that the past did not have to decide the future. Their relationship grew slowly and carefully. They spoke often about responsibility, forgiveness, and the importance of understanding. They knew that love alone was not enough to heal old wounds, but it could inspire people to try. The town began to tell a new story, not one of enemies and fear, but one of courage and honesty. Children grew up hearing about the moment when truth stopped violence and love challenged hatred. The girl's choice became a lesson, passed from one generation to the next. Her father returned to being a guiding figure in the town, this time with wisdom shaped by humility. He helped others face their own old conflicts, encouraging conversation instead of silence. His leadership grew stronger because it was no longer driven by fear. As for the girl, she found her place not just as a daughter or a partner, but as someone who had helped change the path of many lives. She never saw herself as a hero, only as someone who chose honesty when it mattered most. The Wild West town slowly found balance. It did not forget its history, but it no longer lived inside it. The land remained rough, the life challenging, but hope had taken root where anger once lived. Years later, travelers would hear the story and shake their heads in wonder. They would speak of a young woman whose courage ended a feud that once seemed unbreakable. They would say that what happened next truly shook the Wild West, not with fear or conflict, but with the quiet power of truth and understanding. And in the end, that became the town's greatest legacy. Not the battles it avoided or the arguments it won, but the moment it chose to move forward. The girl, her father, and the man she loved stood as proof that even in the harshest places, hearts could change, and a new future could begin.